Thank you for being here today. We have a really, really interesting conversation to have about social media, political dysfunction, and our well-being, and what can we do about it? What do we need to know, and what can we do about it to improve our well-being in today's world? First, I'd like to introduce our speakers, but first, before I introduce our speakers, maybe I should do some housekeeping. For those of you who are attending remotely and who are students who are hoping to get extra credit for their courses, this is what you will need to do. During this event, I will be saying 3 numbers. That's not for you who are in person. We know you're here. But I will be giving you 3 numbers during the course of the event, really randomly. What you will need to do is email Sydney. Sydney, can you come here? Sydney has been helping me organize the event. This is Sydney.
Hi, everyone. How are you?
So this is who you will be emailing. You will be emailing her your name. I mean, obviously she'll have your name, the 3 numbers that I will be saying at random. You will also be emailing the name of the instructor that is providing the extra credit, and we will be responsible for letting them know that you attended the event and that you actually were participating actively online. We hope that you will be posting your questions or writing your question in the Q&A. There's a Q&A on the webinar you can use to post your question. Sydney will be reading the questions, and she will be letting us know if there's one in the Q&A, and she'll be asking them for you. All right, and you'll get an answer from our speakers. So let me introduce our speakers right now. We are pleased to have experts in the field of psychology and cyberpsychology. We're also pleased to have the director of the documentary we're about to watch called Vitriol. Mark, I don't know if you can stand up and so everyone sees you. This is Mark Clauburg. Mark Clauburg is a principal member of Gray Machine Films, a collective of filmmakers and musicians from New Jersey who have been working together on various film and music projects since 2005. Over the past decade, he has directed 11 films, which have screened at 200 festivals and earned more than 60 awards. Vitriol is his 3rd documentary. Thank you, Mark. Dr. Ancis, would you like to stand up so we can see who you are? This is Dr. Ancis. She's a distinguished professor and interim chair of the Department of Informatics and founding director of the Cyberpsychology program at the New Jersey Institute of Technology. Prior to her current position, Dr. Ancis served as the Associate Vice President for Institute Diversity at Georgia Institute of Technology. Dr. Ancis' extensive scholarship publications include 4 books, 80 journal articles, book chapters, and technical reports focused on diversity, multicultural competence, the legal system, and human-computer interaction. Thank you, Julie. Dr. Haines, this is our own Dr. Haines. Dr. Haines is professor of psychology at William Paterson University. Dr. Haines studies social cognition, more specifically the science of understanding, measuring, and changing stereotypes and implicit bias. She's a member of Harvard's Race, Gender, and Equity Initiative since inception in 2013, and a facilitator for Harvard's Project Implicit. This is the world's largest educator on implicit bias. Dr. Haines has over 20 peer-reviewed articles on implicit bias, women and power, stereotype, stability over time, maternal well-being, wall bias, self-concept change, mental health work in couples, sexism towards men, and perceptions of sexist humor. We're really impressed. Thank you, Dr. Haines. And last but not least, Dr. Indick. I don't know if you want to come this way, but Dr. Indick earned his PhD in developmental psychology in 2001 from Cornell University. He's associate professor of psychology at William Paterson University. He has authored many books in the area of media psychology. He's particularly interested in the effects of media immersion on mental health and the psychology of film and screenwriting. His most recent books include Media Environments and Mental Disorder, which was published in 2021. So we'll start this event. Thank you. Thank you. We will start with this event with a screening of Vitriol. We'll all watch together. Vitriol is about 25 minutes. We'll watch the documentary together. And please think of questions you would like to ask. What kind of issues does it raise? What kind of questions do you have as you're watching the documentary? What are your reactions to the documentary? What would you like to share? Your thoughts, your feelings. After we watch the documentary, we'll be asking questions. We'll have this Q&A. And the audience will be invited to also contribute to the Q&A. All right.
It's hard to describe the feeling we get when that notification arrives. A like, a comment validating our feelings, our existence. 3 billion people sharing, liking, tweeting, updating on various platforms. Researchers suggest it's a false sense of security, leading us towards a feeling of isolation and envy. Social media alone is linked to increased risks of depression, anxiety, loneliness, and even self-harm. But there's something different. Something's changed. We're now in a state of hyper-partisanship, where every issue is politicized. We treat the other side not as opponents, but as enemies. Animosity is in the air, it's palpable, and it's terrifying. How did we get here? What can we do to save ourselves? Can we save ourselves?
Hi, my name is Nina Carufa, and I'm a producer/comedian.
My name is Joseph Rudy Rulo. I'm a freelance reporter and a social media influencer.
My name is Mike Calderese. I am a masonry contractor and political podcaster.
Hello, my name is Dr. Julie Ancis. I'm the Director of Cyberpsychology at the New Jersey Institute of Technology.
I found this old clip at Caroline's where I hosted, and I did some crowd work with a Trump supporter. And it was all in good fun. Like, he was laughing, we spoke after the show, we took a picture together, and I posted like 45 seconds of it. Oh my God, there's a lot of you. So, okay, sir, do you hate Muslims? No. So why are you don't hate anybody, just refugees and immigrants and Mexicans and... So why did you vote for Donald Trump?
Because he's gonna make America great again.
Oh my God! What's your name?
Peter.
Peter. Peter, do you hate women?
No.
It just kept like snowballing, and by like the third or fourth day it was up to like 4 million views. So I did the one thing that all social media people should never do, and I read the comments. It was either, oh my God, this is fantastic, or if you don't like America, then leave. And it's like, I was born in New Jersey, so I don't know where I would go exactly. I almost deleted the video, and then I realized that I don't really give a shit. So I left it, and I just hope I don't ever get murdered because I asked a Trump supporter why he voted for Donald Trump.
Some of the things that were bothering me, I needed a better venue to get it all out. So one of the things I noticed people doing was getting on Facebook and just yelling out stuff or making a video. So I started recording myself and putting it on, different platforms. And that's really what started the show was the masks. I lost my mind over the masks,
It needs to stop. All of you wake the fuck up. That's not helping you. It's not helping the people around you. It's hurting you. It's unhealthy. To me, I got a fucking strong-ass immune system. I can eat piles of shit for breakfast. Literally.
I am slightly offensive. And I put people in positions and I back people in corners. And I do so with questioning. And I do so with questioning on Facebook. Oh, yeah, I go from back-to-back 7-day bans to 30-day bans. I'm always banned on Facebook. And it always revolves around something they deem offensive to their community standards. So when I say that, I got a 30-day ban for bullying. I get a ban for bullying because I get called a racist and a bigot.
So you're talking about 400,000 people. They can actually hit a button and they can like send me a message and say whatever they want. At one point, I had to shut it off for about a week so that mentally I can gather myself up again and figure out what is going to be my strategy when they write something bad. One was your mother was kicked in the stomach, obviously. Your mother didn't have oxygen when she was going to have you. Very vicious attacks, some of them, though. I mean, to the point where you could just be sitting there enjoying your day and it says like, you know, a-hole or effing a-hole, or, you know, I've even had death threats, several, to the point where I just laugh at it. I look at the state. If it's not from New Jersey, I'm cool. If it's from New Jersey, I report it to the FBI. And I've reported several things to the FBI and local police. If it's local, it gets reported immediately.
I think that my cultural, historical, and familial backgrounds, along with other factors, influence my tendency and ability to question rigid ways of doing things and to engage in critical analysis and not just accept the status quo. Cyberpsychology is really an interdisciplinary field, and it's not necessarily new, but more sophisticated research methodology has been developed with regard to the study of how human beings interact with technology. Things like understanding our online persona, understanding how we present ourselves online versus face-to-face interactions. It relates to the impact of social media on our psychological well-being, and understanding how things like artificial intelligence and robots interact with human beings and how human beings interact with these machines for the betterment of humankind. We are bombarded with information every moment, every second of the day through multiple news feeds and sources. And social media has really amplified that.
What story are you being told? They're telling you a story with this slant. They're telling you a story with this slant. They're telling you a story with that slant. Somewhere in that is the story. No one person's going to give it to you. If you rely on one person for your information or one media source for your information, then you're a misinformed human being.
Your grandma sees a post of just something random and is like, oh my God, did you see this? And she'll repost and it's like, Grandma, that's not real. How do people still not understand that not everything you read has any merit to it?
So I have like almost like a 10-point system. What I did is I went and I liked every news page for every single news in every state and every town. So if there's a breaking news story that, for example, this actor dies and he's really famous, and I only see one post, I'm like, I know it's not true.
You don't know what spin, what bias that a human being holds, right? So why the hell am I going to listen to them? Oh, this guy said this and he did this. It's always quotes. It's always, and they never really said it. So if I was to knee jerk and just respond to it'd be 4 or 5 a day, where it's just blatant bullshit. Some of my friends go, oh, look at this. And I get on there, I'm like, dude, that's fake. Can you take 4 seconds? 4 seconds, and you would, before the fact checker came out, you would have understood that that was fake.
ABC once put out a picture of like this woman. She was standing on top of like a demolished home, and it said like Israeli woman crying after bomb blew up her house, but it was the complete opposite. It was a Palestinian woman. Even major companies make mistakes, and sometimes they get called out and they apologize, and sometimes it just floats on the internet forever.
I try to expose myself to as many diverse viewpoints as possible, and I try to be conscious of the legitimacy, particularly with regard to the expertise of the particular writer or the particular news source. I want to make sure that sort of what I'm reading has a certain degree of validity to it.
I will also go to whoever the news is about and see what their side is and what their defense is on Twitter. Then I'll see what other people are saying. What direction is this going in? How many people are saying this is false? Give it about 5, it takes 5 minutes.
It takes time and effort, which people don't want. People don't want to do time and effort. They want to look at a story and they want to formulate everything they know about it. It's going to keep you ignorant. You get fed what you want to see, and then you formulate your entire life based on what you want to see, and they feed it to you.
But how widespread is this type of misinformation? What we found in a matter of minutes may have forever eradicated our trust in this once credible network. ABC's World News Tonight airs video images of explosions said to be from an embattled Syrian border town. Shortly thereafter, viewers point to what looks like identical footage on YouTube, taken at a gun range in Kentucky. Most problematic? The ABC version appears edited and potentially doctored for effect. Upon hearing of such accusations, ABC removes the video and releases a retraction statement. However, they don't own up to the accusations of doctoring the footage, leaving us with only questions. Where do we go from here? And how do we decipher what is true from what leads us to scroll away?
Christmas music is now blaring in restaurants, grocery stores, and from, well, our cars, right? Not mine.
But there's one song that has been stirring up national attention because some thinks it's controversial.
There has been some controversy over yet another song.
If you wrote that song today and if you tried to follow the lyrics to that song, you'd probably get arrested for sexual assault.
I swear there's people behind the scenes in these mega media corporations saying, let's see how dumb this population is. Let's see if we get them all riled up over this dumbass thing. How about this? Yeah, Baby It's Cold Outside. Let's take one of the most innocent songs on the planet and demonize it and see if this works. Oh yeah, that worked. That's how stupid people are.
You know, on second thought.
Yes?
I really can't stay.
Baby, it's cold outside.
I've got to go away.
Baby, it's cold outside.
This evening has been
Hoping that you drop
so
in.
very nice.
How many Eminem songs talk about beating women? How many rap songs talk about killing people? Murdering people? That's all it is anymore. But Baby It's Cold Outside is a villain, not Cardi B. Cardi B interviews Joe Biden.
They're so close-minded that they can't see past the fact that she used to be a stripper. Now that it's like Cardi B's famous and she has all this money, and so if she's gonna get on her Instagram Live and tell kids to go out and vote, why are people mad about that?
I said certified freak 7 days a week, wet ass pussy, make that pull-out game weak. Woo! Yeah, you fucking with some wet ass pussy. Bring a bucket and a mop for this wet ass pussy. Give me everything you got for this wet ass pussy. WAP, #1 song in the country. But Baby It's Cold Outside is the problem.
Certified freak, 7 days a week, wet and gushy, make that pull-out game weak.
You can't compare a song about rape to a woman bragging about her wet vagina. Women should be allowed to say and brag about whatever they want, especially if they're not hurting anybody. Men have been doing this for decades in rap and country and every genre of music. And it's like now that a woman is doing it, all of a sudden, oh, this is too much for the youth, and I'm obviously Muslim, I don't talk about my vagina, like it's not something that I would like brag about, but that doesn't mean just because I wouldn't do it, another woman shouldn't be allowed to. It's crazy that in 2020, women still aren't allowed to like talk about their sexuality. It's crazy.
There's also a tendency among human beings to present well, to want to present themselves as good and decent people. And if you think about evolutionary psychology, those are really qualities that enable you to have the support of a larger group.
People want to present the best possible look of themselves, even if they don't believe it. So when you put the blackout thing on your screen, you turn your whole page black, what are you doing? You're not doing anything. All you do is changing your screen. It's like the people that filter out every single one of their pictures, right? All it is to create a fake reality of who you are.
Did you only post the black box because you felt like if you didn't, people would think that you were an asshole? Did you hire a black person after this? Like, did you try to help the cause or the community? Did you donate any money? Like, it's just, of course there are so many people who truly do care, but a lot of people just don't. And it's all for clout and social media, and it's unfortunate. I love Jennifer Lopez. I've actually met her and she's really nice and stuff, but when the whole like Beirut bombing happened, like she posted a picture with like a t-shirt with like Lebanon written on it, but it's like, do you really care? Like, do you really care, J-Lo? Let's say J-Lo didn't care. If she didn't post something, she would have millions of people commenting, I can't believe you're not speaking on this. I feel like you just can't win. You're always gonna upset a certain group of people when it comes to social media.
You're getting the best version of them. You're getting the customer service version of them. And that's all it is. And in customer service, what are you gonna do? Of course, you're gonna play to everybody. You're not offensive. Everybody's friendly. But customer service is a lot of time it's bullshit. When you actually get down to the management, he's going to tell you what's going on. I'm the management. I tell you what the hell's going on. I give it to you straight. People can't handle that.
With social media, you have this aspect of anonymity. And that may encourage people who sort of behave badly in real life to increase that or dial that up.
And there's people that will, I know them, will say stuff online to you behind a computer that they would not say to your face. The biggest problem in Facebook is people do not, you could have all that conflict, you could say whatever the hell you want, and then they pick and choose who's right and wrong.
I don't think your political views really define who you are as a person. I think they define the way you grew up, the way you were raised, maybe just ideas that you think are what's best for the country. Like if I met Peter online and I added him and he posted something about Trump, I'm not gonna write in his comments, well, why are you a Trump supporter? Because I don't really give a shit. Like, I have my own life to worry about. So it's like, it's different when it's online and when it's in person. And also they're just like on their little keyboards and they're so mad and they're going off in the comments, but like no one would ever say that to my face. No guy is gonna come and punch me in the face after a show. Like, that's not gonna happen.
Somebody walked up to me who I thought was a friend or a fan and grabbed my arm. So then when I got him off my arm, he then grabbed my arm again. And what he was trying to do is he was trying to get me to take a video of the woman running against the guy I was supporting. And they tried to get me to use the phone, because they knew I had a huge following, to do the banner that said the name of the other candidate. And when I pulled my arm, he wouldn't let it go. He ripped my arm out of his socket. About 4 months of spasms. Reached out to the actual candidate. At first, she was like in denial. And then I spoke to a few of her supporters, and then she apologized. And I have to worry now when I go to an event where I don't feel safe, unless it's a town where I know the mayor is going to be there and they're government people and the police are accountable. I literally have to have somebody there protecting me. It's not just on the internet.
There is a great deal of misinformation and disinformation on social media, and that information tends to be more extreme, and that ends up taking a life of its own, particularly if the group that you belong to adheres to the particular perspective or thoughts or ideas that are related to that particular post.
On July 25, 2020, Garrett Foster was killed during a heated protest in Austin, Texas, amid the aftermath of George Floyd's death. Foster was carrying an AK-47 rifle, legal in Texas. As a car drove into the group of protesters, Garrett Foster approached the driver's window. The driver, active U.S. Army Sergeant Daniel Perry, shot and killed Foster before speeding away, as a bystander fired several shots at Perry's car. As a social experiment, our producers set up a fictional news aggregator on Facebook and named it End Times Media. The first post to the page was an intense and disturbing video capturing the chaos of the Garrett Foster tragedy. Viewer discretion is advised.
Someone got shot, guys. Someone got shot.
In just a few hours, the post began circulating, eventually reaching over 21,000 viewers, and was shared 100 times. The likes and comments were harsh. They were brutal, and they were politically charged.
What I saw when Obama won, things I heard were vile, disrespectful. He was an American who won president. And like many Republicans, I respected him as president throughout. At the same time, you had a horrible division starting to be created because you had 8 years of Democrats and you had Republicans that were sick and tired of Democrats just specifically doing all of their platform and doing none of the Republican platform. They have their platform, and it's almost like the antimatter universe of ours. They're like, the two of them, if they merged together, they would destroy each other because they're opposites, okay?
When you label yourself something, you automatically take on those causes. No matter what the causes are, you will defend the causes. Whether you believe them or not, you're going to defend them. It's like, for example, I never classified myself as white. I was an American Italian, right? But the second I classified myself, I guess got labeled white and I classified myself white, I started arguing all the white points. And then I had to step back and go, wait a second, you never even thought of yourself as white. Why are you fighting for whiteness? Right, you're falling right into it. You're falling right into the trap.
If you don't all jump on this bandwagon that like Joe Biden is on, or Bernie Sanders is on, or Kamala's on, or if you even remotely criticize anybody, even look with Kamala Harris, like, you know, I don't really like the fact that she was a prosecutor, I don't really like cops too much. Oh, you just hate her because she's a black woman. So no one wants to be labeled that, so they just, I love Kamala, I think she's a great VP pick. Like, no one would ever, on the left, say that that was a bad idea, even if they think that.
I'm a Republican in New Jersey. I think the only one. And I support legalization question coming up on the ballot in November for marijuana. Well, the Republicans, they're creating this as an issue. And to me, it's not a Republican and Democrat issue. It's a libertarian or a liberty issue. It's a business issue. It's a incarceration issue. Why can't we, instead of defunding the police department, why can't we take the savings from no more arrests when they legalize marijuana and put that into the community and make the community better?
I think it stems so far past just politics. I think people just want to be accepted. So they find a group that thinks similarly to them, even if it's not 100% the same. No one is really authentically themselves anymore. And I think it's because everyone just wants to fit in, so they find the category that they fit most in and they just embody that, even if it's not authentic. As generations pass, the youth are a little more accepting than the previous generation, and it's just going to keep getting better. People in power need to reflect what society really looks like, which is a mix of everything. And until that happens, and until everyone feels comfortable and safe in the country, nothing is going to change. I think it's going to take a long time. I don't think it's going to be within my lifetime, but I think in a couple generations, the world is definitely going to be a different place. And I'm here for it.
You know, people have these rose-colored glasses of what humans actually are. We suck. And it's represented in all the social media platforms. All it is representative of how humans are as a society. Ignorant, stupid, idiot-type people. That's all. It's really all it is. We don't want to dive any further into real thought or discussion.
But I think we're in a crisis right now, in this world and in this country, in particular, where we're not seeing a lot of civil discourse, increasing divide among human beings, and increasing conception of us versus them. And I'm concerned about the climate of today and where that's going to take us if we don't reverse course.
I see civil war, if we're being honest. Yeah, I mean, if we're being dead honest, I see bad things coming in our direction. I hope I'm wrong, though. Yeah, I hope I'm wrong. All of the indicators are there. If you look at revolutions in the past, we're following the same trajectory, let's just put it that way.
The only way I think it would ever happen is if you had a coup. It would become a military type of thing. Once the military gets involved, it's over, okay? We have enough military that every state has their own National Guard. Every state you go into, you're gonna be fighting a National Guard. And by the way, all those National Guard people have family and friends and are related to probably half the people that are gonna be in this war. It's not gonna happen. It's a big hype.
While the threat of a modern-day civil war may be just that, a big hype, should we ignore the warnings from top academics and journalists who see the writing on the wall? As a nation, are we headed towards an increased sense of unity under a new presidential regime, or will we find ourselves more divided than ever? Time will tell. In the meantime, what will you do to encourage a new way forward?
Thank you. So we're going to give some time to our speakers to transition to the table. And what we'd like to do first is ask them to comment on what they just watched. And I want to share with you the first number is 1. As they find their seats at the table, Dr. Ancis, Haines, Indick, I'm wondering if you could share some brief comments on the documentary. And I'm interested in hearing you say something about one or two key psychosocial issues the documentary highlights. And perhaps you can tell us how important, what's important for us to know about those psychosocial issues. So maybe we can start with Dr. Ancis.
Hi, everybody. Well, could you hear me okay? Okay. One issue that I think this film really demonstrates is that we are more alike than we are different in so many ways. And in addition to that, many of us are equally frustrated with the state of affairs right now, with social media, with the abundance of misinformation and disinformation, with a lot of the vitriol that we're seeing right now in our society, and that's demonstrated on social media increasingly. So those are some of the immediate issues that I see.
Trying to get everybody on.
Can we go to Dr. Haines?
I'm Elizabeth Haines, and I also am a user of social media. So I just want to make that very clear. Just like we have an understanding of what we should do with our bodies, we oftentimes don't have an understanding what we should do with our minds. So, you should eat right, you should exercise, that you shouldn't eat too many sweets or fats and so forth. But I think that we're not as well versed in terms of how we feed our minds and what we put in front of us. And it's oftentimes all for fun and games, as we scroll through, we're waiting in line and so forth. And we don't really realize what kind of impact that has. I don't know how many hours you spend on social media, but it's probably more than 10 a week. Is that a fair statement? Okay, maybe even longer. That's a lot of time to feed your mind. Probably more time that you actually spend in class right now. So just as a counterpoint. So, just be a little bit more critical about what you're putting in front of yourselves, because as it goes with just exposing yourself to ideas over and over again, even things that are not completely accurate, because they gain a sense of familiarity, they also get a sense of truth too. So the more times, there's an idea called the illusion of truth, that the more times that we see something or the more times we hear something, we become more familiar with that message, and then we equate that message with accuracy. So we can fill our heads with like candy and also false information that's there. And then the second point is just about polarization. It's likely that you are friends on social media with people who share your particular perspectives and ideas, and tend to shy away from people who are less in your kind of in-group and so forth. And so that leads us all to be in an echo chamber. It's likely that you seek out people who have similarity to you and don't seek out people who are different. And what that does is that it allows you to only really confirm your pre-existing beliefs rather than challenge them. If you want to actually view the world more accurately, you need to look for information that both confirms and disconfirms your beliefs. And so that's what we do in science. That's what we do in courtrooms. Look at the evidence of both sides, and it really gives you a one-sided view.
Dr. Indick?
Hi, I'm Bill Indick. I do not use social media, or I avoid it as much as I possibly can. I believe that social media is a toxic media environment, and it toxifies relationships and toxifies your sense of self. The fact that I try my hardest to not go on social media, but I'm still locked in and can't delete all of my social media accounts is part of the reason. Anything that's toxic has a sort of drip on you. And like if you think of addiction is indicated by the desire to want to quit, but the inability to do so. Recently, I read a book called 10 Reasons to Delete All of Your Social Media Accounts by Jared Lanier. And it's by far the best book I've read on the subject. And one of the reasons he suggests that everybody should delete their social media accounts right now is because it makes assholes out of people. He calls it an asshole machine. And the reason it's an asshole machine is because the algorithms that fuel social media filter people into bubbles. And the people who are the loudest bubbles, or the people who create the most negative feedback, get the most attention. That's how the algorithms work. So any environment in which people are not only encouraged to be assholes, but are rewarded for it, is clearly a toxic media environment. And I'm very happy to take the sort of devil's advocate far left or right stance, however you do it. You know, and I'm happy to play that part. Thank you.
Thanks to the three of you. Mark, I'm wondering if you could respond to what you just heard.
Yeah, I'm with Bill.
Thank you. Didn't want to be alone on that side.
I haven't quit social media, but I only use it to promote like the films I do and to post pictures on a private Instagram for family that lives in other states, track my children and let them be involved and stuff like that.
And the fact that people like you and I, you were locked in. We have to do social media in order to promote our books and promote our movies, and you know, that's in and of itself is a toxic aspect of that environment. I'm sorry, it's your turn.
Yeah, I know. And then it all came from just watching my family, especially around 2020. We're like split in two. I had people voting for Trump, people voting for Hillary. My wife saying, if you don't go vote for Hillary, don't come home, kind of thing. And I'm very apolitical. I don't participate. I know a lot of people disagree with that, but just seeing like family members not ripped apart, but not talking to each other. Like I have a brother-in-law who lives in Indiana, Fort Wayne, Indiana, which is very conservative. And his mother is one of the most liberal women I know. And it's just tough around the holidays because there's these arguments that arise. And year after year, at one point, I'm like, where's this all coming from? And that's what kind of spurred on the idea to do this. And at first, I kind of wanted to just take a look at all the tragic stories of people who have been like Joey, who's gotten death threats, and Nina, who performed at Caroline's and had, you know, Trump supporters shouting at her. I was interested in just telling those, but then to Julie's comment about us being much closer than we are, the documentary took a turn, and next thing you know, Nina's talking shit about the Democrats and Mike's talking shit about the Republicans. And I'm like, that's a beautiful thing. They're not in this box where if I'm a Republican, I'm supposed to vote against abortion or I'm supposed to do this. Like, I feel like I'm more of an issue by issue person. I don't like to label myself. So the lack of a label is my biggest thing, I think.
Thank you. I think you've addressed already. The question I had for you is what made you think about producing and directing a documentary like this one, like Vitriol? And what, maybe you can answer this. What surprised you during the making of the documentary?
Yeah, and that was the big surprise is like from a film perspective, if anybody has experience with film, we faced all the people we thought, and this is almost my bias, we faced the two liberals to the left and we faced the two conservatives to the right. But I almost regret doing that because I felt like they had so many things that they agreed on. But the focus that the media puts on is our difference. And that goes to Bill's comment about the algorithm. Facebook is so evil in that way where it does pit us against each other just because it creates money, you know, and that's why I got off of Facebook.
Thank you. So now we're going to turn to the audience, and we have already some members of our psychology club have prepared some questions, and Caitlin will go first.
What is cyberpsychology, and what is the relation between cyberpsychology and social psychology?
Thanks for the question. So cyberpsychology is essentially the discipline of understanding the psychological processes that are underlying all aspects of technologically oriented human behavior. So it's everything about human beings and technology, which is basically everything today. So it covers things like questions like, what's the impact of social media on our well-being? what is our online persona? How is our online personality different from our quote unquote offline personality? What is the impact of gaming on our well-being, on our education? How can we use AI and virtual reality, which is essentially simulated experiences in our, there's a lot of psychology students here, right? In our training programs. Can we have, and there are programs that do this, simulated patients. So we could practice on simulated patients as opposed to real human beings when we're very early in our training. So it includes all of these aspects of, again, the interactions of human beings and technology. If you're really interested in this, I wrote a piece in the new American Psychological Association journal, Technology, Mind, and Behavior. It was in the first issue in the first journal, and it provides an overview of cyberpsychology and the implications of that educationally, clinically, and in terms of research. It's in the 2020 issue of that journal.
Thank you.
Add from the social psychology standpoint. So social psychology is how we think about influence and relate to one another. We don't really make a distinction between online influence and in-person influence because it's kind of like what's going on in your head and it's the space between people. So when you're online, even though you're by yourself, there is an implied presence of the other, right? And so technically it's a computer mediated interaction, but at the same time, you're also being de-individuated because you are kind of, hidden from another person. So it does create this important moderator or kind of depends upon, and just like, Nina said, there's people will do different things in person than they will do online. And then also you'll see, because you get actual data back, and from a behaviorist perspective, this is great because you're getting rewarded or punished. And we know from psychology, rewards and punishment are actually both can increase behavior because you're getting attention. The only thing that doesn't give you attention is when you get something ignored, right? Let me ask the audience a question. Have you ever erased a post? Have you ever done that? Yeah. No, never. Oh, wow. You're very authentic then. I love that. You did think like maybe on secondhand, that wasn't such a great thing to do. How many people have ever erased a post? Okay. Oh, good. Okay. So you had second thoughts. So there's something about that happens in the moment and that you think it's a good idea. And then you think back. And I want you to think a little bit about what was the situation under which you actually erased something. Was it that you were being too authentic, not authentic enough? That your curated identity was not the one that you wanted to portray? Maybe that picture didn't look as good as you thought it did at 1 o'clock in the morning at the bar.
Thank you. So the second number is 9. Now we turn to, is it Camilla?
Hello. Okay. So my question is for Dr. Haines. I have 2 questions, but I'll start with the first one. In social psychology, we study how group dynamics influence individual decisions. How do groups on social media influence the decisions each of us make online?
Okay, that's such a great question. Thank you. So a lot of us don't really know or understand where we stand in terms of confidence, warmth, kindness, creativity, and so forth, except in our relationship to other people. So a lot of people mistakenly assume that your individual identity is just individually defined and you just do it. Most of our understanding about our characteristics come via social comparison. How good of a driver am I? How creative am I? How good of a professor am I? Well, let me compare myself to similar others. By the way, a lot of your friends and your in-group are similar others. So you're seeing what they do, oh, they're posting pictures like that, then, like I want to be like that. They're my friends. And then I'm also allowed to do that. And it also kind of gets a little bit of feedback again, from the behaviorist standpoint, the getting, oh, slay, because you look cute or whatever from your friends, that you've done something acceptable and that you do rank. And also, especially I want to make a comment about teenagers and like, early teens. I think this is particularly problematic because self-concept is pretty less stable during those times. It's before you have, your partner identities, oftentimes your roles in terms of worker and so forth. So it's going to be a lot more volatile. So how many likes and how many comments that you get is really going to push up your self-concept and change the way you interact with the different types of social media.
So my second question is, some individuals, you kind of answered it already,
Okay.
but
I can probably say some more because it's hard to turn me off sometimes.
some individuals look for validation on social media. What makes validation so important to human beings, and what are the risks of using social media as a source of validation?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I actually do have more to say about that. So you may remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs and safety and security as being kind of the base level. Once you get to that, need for self-esteem, need for validation from others. As Julie said before, that our relations to in-groups provide also those kinds of aspects as well. But one of the problems with social media that you can get on this kind of self-esteem treadmill, we have hedonic treadmills, but we also have self-esteem treadmills, and that the more you get, the more you want, and we can all become kind of leaky buckets with it. So, and I've, I've like played with a little bit of that. I mean, like, oh yeah, it's like a real great thrill to see like, oh my gosh, I got 100 people like that particular picture or something I said was, resonate. Mostly, I just want to make people laugh on social media. I make fun of myself a lot because there's a lot to make fun of. So, but it is very rewarding. And then I've seen myself almost like check out from real social situations in order to check. And that's where it really becomes problematic. But I worry about I have a 20-year-old and a 17-year-old, and I worry about how much they spend on there and what kind of image and that they're trying to portray on there too. And so it doesn't reduce, it only enhances and increases. And the leaky bucket, it just like you have to keep filling it up over and over again. That externally driven types of self-esteem are very challenging. It's very challenging to maintain. Having the things where you feel good about yourself without the presence of an audience is what maintains, long-term stable mental health and self-esteem.
Thank you. So we have a question from the online audience, and Cindy is going to read it to us.
So we have a question for Dr. Indick. It says, do you think deleting our social media accounts completely would override the positive aspects of social media? Or do you believe that there is actually a healthy way to use social media?
I think if you can delete your social media accounts and just live a life without it for a while and then make an informed decision about whether there are any so-called positive aspects of social media, that would be the thing to do. As a society, as a species, we've been put into this experiment, this social media experiment, where we have all this powerful technology at our hands, and we have limitless people to compare ourselves to. And we do see the negative effects are quite obvious, not just in terms of our personal sense of self, but in our culture, in the vitriol that we see in our political scenarios. So the negative qualities of this toxic media environment are quite obvious. The positive qualities are not necessarily quite as obvious. And I think if we were doing the experiment the right way, we would break people up into like a control group and an experimental group, and we would actually try to predict the effects of the media on society and the individual before we offer it to the entire world. So right now we're in this experiment. There are no controls. The people running the experiment are corporations who are only interested in our money and our time and our attention. And if you really do imagine yourself as a sort of guinea pig, as a subject in this very unethical experiment, I could see no reason to want to stay in it.
Thank you. Marcela?
Hi, panelists. Thank you. My questions that I prepared are for Dr. Ancis. My first question is, what generational differences are there, if there are any, in the effects of social media use and the exposure on mental health?
That's a really broad question, and there's no exact answer to that. Most studies conducted looking at the impact of social media on human beings are conducted on younger populations. Most of those studies are not longitudinal over a significant period of time. They're cross-sectional, so it's one time. Most of them rely on self-report, and most of us underreport our social media use. We never overreport, and we rarely get it correct, because we're not using sort of sensing data to really objectively measure how much we're on social media. And also, I want to come with the perspective here, introduce another sort of thought that sort of not all social media is bad. And it's all about how we use it. And we're not getting rid of social media. That's not going anywhere. And we all use social media for different reasons. Some of us use it to connect with other human beings. Some of us use it for educational purposes. Some of us use it for entertainment purposes. Some of us use it to express our protests or our hate. So there are different reasons for it. There's also so many different platforms, right? There's Twitter, there's Instagram, there's LinkedIn. I'm on all of them, by the way. There's Facebook. And we all use those platforms for different reasons. I will say that some studies show that there's absolutely no impact of social media use on things like depression and anxiety. Those are usually the qualities that are measured. Other studies say, yes, there is an impact, but it's mostly at the high ends with really heavy use, quote unquote, problematic use, quote unquote, addictive use. We could get into a whole conversation whether it's addictive or not. I think it is addictive. I think that's pretty obvious, but not everybody in the field appreciates that term for a variety of reasons. So it's a complicated question, and the answer, like most answers in psychology, is it depends, right? So.
Thank you. And then my second question is, what do we know now in our field? Any literature you read, and obviously you do literature yourself, about the relation between individuals' social and political identities and their behaviors on social media? So for example, what they post, what they repost, and what they respond, how they respond to others.
I'll say that what we see in terms of we're more alike than different, which is, I think, a great point in Mark's film, is that we see similar patterns between supporters of different political parties. Okay, so it doesn't really matter which political party you belong to. What we see in the really extreme groups, extreme political parties, is that those with more extreme views tend to have smaller networks, okay, than those with more moderate views. And there's like hardly any overlap in terms of the content that's being viewed and shared and disseminated between those at the extremes in terms of their political affiliations. And then, so when you get to that, right, like no overlap, then you're talking about echo chambers, where you're just being fed information that's consistent with your likes and your preferences and your interests and your values and everything that you're viewing. And by the way, everything that you're saying, because the phone is recording you, you've probably noticed all kinds of things popping up on your feed. And you're like, what's that about? What is that about? I was just having a conversation, right, with my partner, and now I'm getting this information. So you have these echo chambers, and then you have these filter bubbles, which makes us more vulnerable to misinformation and disinformation. And we become consumers of that information, and then we become disseminators of that information into our echo chambers, our filter bubbles with our friends and our family. And that's where you see the political viewpoints, the perspectives becoming more and more extreme.
Thank you. We have another question from the online audience. Sydney?
So this question is for the whole panel. It says, while social media is quite influential on thoughts and behaviors, do you think that it is still a way to promote learning?
Who would like to answer?
Well, I think your point in the film is really well taken. You know, who is doing the education, who is doing the influencing, and the credentials of the person who is trying to provide that education, I think, are very important. But oftentimes we don't kind of take that second step, is saying, you know, who's saying it, what's their purpose, do they have any goals like that are maybe, you know, ulterior goals or motives and so forth. So I want, you know, sorry, maybe this is my you know, bias, but I want people who are actual authorities on a particular topic to be talking about things. I see a lot of things. So I go on TikTok and I see a lot of people talking about social psychological concepts who just get the data wrong, you know? So I would really like to have, you know, in some ways more of it. So don't cancel your account, just get on more. We need more people like you, Bill, you know, like actually putting your stuff out there. I know. So so that's, you know, anyone who has an opinion or maybe read, you know, you know, took a social psychology course 10 years ago has now a platform to say some of these things. So that's, you know, so yes, but, or, and, is that fair enough to answer?
Yeah.
That? Okay.
I have a blog on Psychology Today. It's a cyberpsychology page. You could get on it. It's free of charge. And one of my blogs, I entitled "Everybody's a COVID Expert." I was living in Atlanta at the time, which had a really different conversation around the validity of COVID and whether we should wear masks or not. And I would watch Governor Kemp, he just became again the governor of Georgia, who had a very particular viewpoint. And then I would turn on the television, not on the television, I don't have a television. I would open up my computer to watch Cuomo and listen to Cuomo's message, which was very different. I was taken by is the fact that there were these people that were getting online calling themselves doctors. And all of a sudden, these were the people that were the experts on how we should wash our groceries and handle our groceries. And then I'd find out, you know, this so-called doctor is like a dermatologist, has no background in viruses or diseases. So I agree. I think we have to be really cautious and careful in terms of thinking about who is presenting this information. You know, I think when we're all subject to, I'll just Google it. Like I do the same. I have a PhD. Like I should know better. Let me just Google it, and whatever comes up, oh yes, you know, that's the answer, that we take it as fact. And we all, myself included, need to be more careful about that.
And just because people say things with confidence does not mean that they're more accurate. We oftentimes conflate or confuse or confound confidence with accuracy. And so confident people, we know from the research, are not more accurate. They just talk a little louder and they have more firm views. And so, but they tend to be believed more. So just be careful about, you know, someone portraying a particularly, you know, argument in a confident way.
Thank you. Sophia has a question for you.
All right, I got two questions, one for Dr. Haines and one for Dr. Indick. So from an evolutionary standpoint, we humans want to present the best versions of ourselves. So how does social media help us do that? And what are the advantages and disadvantages?
Is that one mine or is that Bill's?
Yours.
Okay, that's one. Yeah. So yeah, we impression management is huge. We want to present the best versions of ourselves. I would say that it's always the best version. I think it's the one that we call it self-verification, however you kind of define your self-concept. Some people like really identify with you know, their goofy self or their, you know, their funny self or their beautiful self. So it's the self that they are most kind of tied to. And that's, you know, social media is a great way to do it because you can really edit out all the things that don't agree with that particular type of verification of self-concept. So it is very curated and it is very, you know, so I'm a mom. I see a lot of momming kind of things. Oh, look what a great mom I am. And, you know, look at all the things that I'm doing and, you know, posting pictures of what they're cooking and so forth. You know, you really can create, you know, and what else? I don't have anything to argue with that. You know, I don't know they're taking out or doing other things that would not, you know, counteract that. Not that takeout is bad. It's fine. But it's just that I don't have the disconfirming evidence. And so it's basically a confirming kind of aspect of it. So Bill.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So for Dr. Indick, what are the effects of social media use and exposure on mental health, in particular to depression and anxiety?
Okay.
So on average, most of the studies show that there is an association between anxiety and depression and social media. That doesn't really tell you much. What are the reasons for those associations? We could start with the most obvious, which is FOMO. Why do people get on social media to begin with? What's their initial motivation? Well, everybody else is on it. I must be missing out. I'm going to get on there. So if your motivation is to get onto social media because you're afraid of missing out, then you're already locked in, because the moment you get out of social media, you are all you're going to be doing is wondering, what am I missing out on? What am I missing out on? So in that arena, in that environment in which everyone is very, very afraid of missing out on possibly anything, the prime stimulation you get are these opportunities for social comparison. And this is obviously something that humans have always done. How do you know you're a good person? Well, you can't just compare yourself to the dog or the tree. You have to compare yourself to another human. And that's something we've always done. But never before in the history of humans have we had the ability to see so many other images of humans and compare ourselves literally to limitless other humans. That technology, we don't know what to do with. What we know is that when people spend all of their time looking at other profiles and comparing themselves to those profiles, they wind up feeling bad about themselves. Because there's always going to be somebody prettier, younger, taller, skinnier, richer, more successful, better boyfriend. There's always going to be somebody who has something you don't have. So it is a sadness machine in that sense, where going in, you know you're going to find things that are going to make you feel bad about yourself. But you're locked in and you just keep looking and looking and looking, even though those feelings make you feel bad about yourself. Makes you feel inadequate, lowers your self-esteem. And probably the worst part is this chronic self-dissatisfaction, that there's always something about me that is not as good as what I'm seeing out there. And then possibly the thing that's less obvious is the idea that people go into social media seeking connection with other people. I call this the window mirror illusion. So social media is this window to the world where we can connect with infinite other people. But because it is infinite, what we find is that, first of all, the filter bubbles, the algorithms, push us into these echo chambers where we're really only seeing profiles of people who look exactly like us and say the exact same things we do and believe the same things we do. Also, you're not seeing real people. First of all, you're seeing a lot of bots. There's a billion-dollar industry in the creation of bots who pretend to be real people, but are just fake profiles meant to get people to pay attention and to get people locked in to the environment. So the window mirror illusion is devastating because people are getting onto social media. They desperately want to connect with other people, but for the most part, all they're getting is a mirror, reflections of themselves that they don't recognize themselves. And that's obviously that's going to bring in depression and anxiety, because you're seeking social connection, but what you're getting is social isolation. You're in a hall of mirrors, but you're being fooled to think that you're in an audience with limitless other people who are real as opposed to virtual. So it's this virtual hall of mirrors that I think is the hidden danger of social media that nobody talks about except me.
Thank you. We have another question from the online audience, and we'll then, if you have questions also in the room, there's one question in the room. So we'll take one question in the room and maybe one for the online audience. Can you, you have the microphone? There's someone. Oh, okay.
To record it on Zoom, we do.
To get your question on Zoom, we're recording the session. So how about we share the microphone with you?
I'm sorry. Okay, so in the documentary, it showed how like obviously in the media, a lot of things are portrayed incorrectly, and they even alter a lot of things to give, to just give their one message that they're trying to show to the whole world. So my question is to you guys, especially the ones that don't really use social media, where do you get your information from? Because obviously, like you said, you Google everything and you just, typically that's what people do. They just take the whatever first answer comes up on Google. But how do you really go about like verifying your information, whatever you on whatever topic you're trying to just find out more on?
I don't want to like, so I think a lot about this. I spent a lot of time listening to National Public Radio, which has technically no advertisements. So there's that. I Google a lot of research on particular to fact check things. And then I spent some time on I actually do have a television. I'm one of those old people. I have a 20-year-old television, and I flip back and forth between CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News to see how they're covering the day's events. And it's fascinating. So, and it really does give me different kinds of lenses in terms of what's important. Mostly, it's not that the data are completely important. It's the prioritization of things that actually changes. And so they're going to change, they're going to affect how you think about what's important right now versus what's not important. So I try to use a lot. It sounds like I have a lot of free time. It's just how I kind of unwind some things. But I get alerts from New York Times, Fox News, all that kind of stuff, because I really do want to understand how this is being portrayed across different things. And then I go back, like, especially when they report on science, because they oftentimes get it wrong. I like to go back to the original article to see what the original article said and see how the news is reporting on that particular piece of science.
So let me make some space for online questions, and then we'll go back to the room for more questions. Sydney?
Okay, so the question is, do you believe the rise of social media has made parasocial relationships more common? Do you think people develop parasocial relationships with politicians, and is the reason why they are more defensive about their political views?
What was the last part of that question?
So do you think people develop parasocial relationships with politicians, and is the reason why they are more defensive about their political views?
I mean, there's no social media technology has completely flattened previous hierarchies. So now we could connect with anybody, anywhere, at any time across the globe. That is an incredible feat. And I think that's a wonderful thing. And so I think in that respect, or in some respects, we are connecting with other human beings in ways that we never did before. I've met many people through, for example, my LinkedIn account. I've developed relationships, professional relationships through Twitter. I'm now familiar with all kinds of research because of my social media accounts. So I think that has provided incredible things. And I think that's very important in terms of, creating relationships that are social, that are professional, and getting information as well. So I don't take this broad negative brush or a broad positive brush, because it just depends.
So maybe you can ask a question from the room. Is there a microphone here? Oh, there is someone here. Okay, so, and then we'll give it to you, Mike.
All right. Can anyone hear me?
Yeah.
All right. So my question is, right, so you were talking about, I forgot which one, but one of you were talking about like misinformation and disinformation. My question is, who defines what's misinformation and disinformation? Because a while ago, I don't know if you heard, but the government literally tried to roll out like something called like a disinformation governance board, which is basically a ministry of truth. If you read the book 1984. And so my question is, are we all now too stupid enough to know, know what's right and what's wrong? Like, I'm pretty sure all of us in here are very smart individuals that we can figure out for ourselves what's true and what's not. And honestly, it's up to us to figure it out. No one should be lecturing us on what's true and what's false.
So yeah, I don't think it has anything to do with intelligence whatsoever. So
sure, because I mean, you have the news media lecturing you every single night on how to be a good person.
Mm-hmm. Well, misinformation is false information that's not necessarily intended to harm. It's just false information. Disinformation is false information with an intention to harm either a human being, a group, a country, etc. You mentioned bots. There are, governments, and this is well known in the literature, Russia, China, who have whole industries of bots, industries, institutes of false information that are all over our social media feed, impersonating Black Lives Matter activists, for example. And you think you're viewing something from a Black Lives Matter activist. In fact, you're viewing a Russian bot. And they're very sophisticated. They take advantage of our cultural expressions and the divisions in our country, because the intention is exactly to divide us. And
Can I ask a follow-up question, please?
Yeah.
So, okay, so good point. I will say.
Thank you.
No. When someone gives a good point, I'm going to tell them they made a good point. But the reason why I have a follow-up question is because, it's easy to fall into like the misinformation, disinformation trap. But like what I said before about who defines as misinformation and disinformation, we have like the president's son had a laptop that very well could have, if people knew about it, they would have swung their vote the other way. And also, Facebook admitted that their fact checkers are just opinion checkers. And so it's like, is misinformation and disinformation just information that the government just doesn't like or doesn't want you to know? Like, how do we know?
So maybe I don't know if this is a question, sounds like more a comment, but maybe we have.
No, it's a legit question.
Yeah, so we have other questions in the room. We're going to just give time to other people to ask questions.
Can I just hop in there for a second?
Yeah, for sure.
I just kind of almost a point of order. I just wanted to point out, make the point that truth is an illusion. Truth is a construct that humans have created. And it's always been this illusion that we cling to very strongly so that we're not living in a completely chaotic universe where literally anything could happen at any time. And what social media has done was it's pulled the veil on that, revealing to us that every aspect of truth, every time we think we know something, we're just deluding ourselves. Now, when I was growing up, I got my information from print media, newspapers, books, professors, people with credentials, so that my sense of, okay, if I'm getting truth, at least I could sort of logically back that up. And what's happened with social media is, like you said, it's flattened it out so that regardless of where the information is coming from, whether it's coming from print media, or newspaper, television show, radio show, once it gets on social media, it's on even ground. Doesn't matter who's posting it, doesn't matter who originally authored it, because everything is going to be changed. Everything's going to be twisted around to support whatever viewpoint of the profile that's espousing this view. So social media has done something great. It has shown us all that truth is an illusion and you can't believe anything. And you have to be incredibly discerning when you venture to believe anything. Is that a good thing? Is it a good thing when our illusions are revealed to us? I can't say. It's dangerous and it's interesting, and I don't know what will happen. It's part of this grand experiment that we're all in.
Thank you. So we're about at the end of our time, and I want to thank everyone for participating. Before we go, the third number is 6. So I want to let you all know that we can continue having this conversation with the speakers. We have cookies and coffee in the room next door, and this is an opportunity for you to get to know us. If you don't know me, come introduce yourself. I'm the chair of the psychology department. I would love to get to know you, especially if you're one of our psychology students. Join us next door. And I just want to have one last question for our speakers. If you could tell us, what are the key takeaway messages from the conversations we just had today, very, very briefly? And maybe Mark, I don't know if you have comments. What did you learn today?
I learned a lot. I want to make a sequel with these folks on this panel here. I just love the diversity of ideas. We're here, we're able to give different opinions without worrying if it's a safe space for those ideas. And I just appreciate the panel so much for the opportunity to participate, because sometimes you come here and you know, I don't know, like you can't say things that you want to say. So it was very fulfilling for me. Thank you.
When am I go next? So I'm going to kind of bring it full circle. You know, we go on social media oftentimes to see kind of what's going on, a little FOMO, what other people are doing. And I'm going to go back to our defenses are oftentimes down. And just so as Bill said, you know, you're making all these social comparisons and you don't really have an understanding of how it's affecting you emotionally, because you're like, oh, it's just social media. But it can evoke, you know, particular types of reactions. And just like, you know, when you sit down for a, you know, a meal, or you like, you know, take something out of the cabinet, you know, and you start feeding your face with it. And you're not like, before you know it, like you're at the bottom of the, whatever that is, the tub of ice cream or whatever. And you're like, how did that happen? You don't feel so good about yourself. So every time you go on social media, what I'd like you to do is to think about being a little bit more mindful in terms of like, what's going on? How is this going to affect me? There's a little trick that people use not to overeat. Instead of eating, if you're right-handed, start eating with your left-handed. So like, that's just like a little kind of like reminder that you want to just kind of like slow it down and really think about what's happening, and it kind of evoke, you know, your more kind of critical kind of evaluation self. And when you think like, when you observe the social comparisons, you know, what is someone trying to portray about themselves, rather than just kind of accepting it at face value.
Yeah, that's great. I want to thank Mark for being part of this film. I think this film is incredible, not because I'm in it. I just think he did an incredible job of showing different perspectives. It's an engaging film. It's funny. He's got every aspect of human emotion in there. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity to be in it. You know, to the fellows' points and who asked, who was standing over there. I think we need to be more cautious about what we're seeing. I really think we all need to educate ourselves about disinformation and misinformation. It's very real. It's only going to get worse with technology, for example, deep fakes. And any deep fake could be created with any of us right now because we're on camera. Of our voice, it's been recorded, and we could be shown saying things or doing things that we actually didn't do. And so in my mind, there is a difference between truth, and there is a difference between that and fiction. And that's very real. I don't take a postmodern sort of stance on that. I think there is such a thing as truth, and there is such a thing as fiction, and it's up to us to figure that out. To your point, and I agree 100%. And I say this to myself because, you know, oftentimes you get old people like me talking to younger generation about social media. And it's like, social media is really your world. Like most of you are probably Zoomers in here and could teach us a thing or two about the experience. Nonetheless, you know, I think we should all be more mindful, us older people included. Put the phone away when you're having dinner, like with friends or family. Just do that for an hour. You know, I get into arguments with my partner about that. Like, could you please not check your phone, even though it's beeping? We've been at work all day. Could we sit and talk and just sort of enjoy this experience? When you wake up in the morning, try. It's so hard. It's so hard for me not to like look at your phone immediately. Take a moment, sort of breathe, you know, meditate for 2 minutes about like the joy that you're going to find in the day before you pick up the phone. So I think being more mindful and more conscious of our sort of relationship. Why? So we could connect with like real human beings who are next to us, right? And talk to them and truly feel a sense of belonging with the human race.
Can I add 1 minute to that real fast? Yeah. So I hope that nobody thought the film was lecturing at them. And I know the very end of the film talked about potential civil war, but my personal opinion on that is that that's not going to happen because I've met so many young kids. I have a sophomore in college and a sophomore in high school, and they are both so mindful of their social media use. And I'm so impressed by it that I have to seek their guidance for my personal use. And I've come across so many. I think this new generation does have it under control. And I have no doubt that none of this bad stuff that was hinted at is going to happen. So I just wanted to add that.
I wish I was as optimistic as you are. But first of all, thank you for making this film. And I think, as we all agree, what we need is mindfulness. Thinking about the media as we use it, or even before we use it, would be preferable. Thinking about the effects of the media on our behavior and on our feelings and on our personas, on the image that we're trying to project. And this question came up a bunch of times and was never really answered. I'm not going to pretend to answer it, but the question is, well, what's the difference between our online personas and our real selves, our real identities? And one basic difference is that when I think of my real self, it's something that I live, it's something that I experience in the moment, something that develops every minute of my day. An online persona is something that we construct, and anything that we construct is going to have an element of fakeness to it. And that, to me, is the most basic difference.
Thanks to the four of you, and thank you so much, the Psychology Club as well. They helped us prepare questions. A big round of applause. Yes, and thank you for being with us and for actually socializing with us in person.